Silly season dominoes continue to fall as Michael McDowell will join Spire Motorsports in 2025. Stewart-Haas Racing's future is very uncertain at this moment, and the 2025 NASCAR schedule could be released this month. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports to discuss today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple of days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Dillon's 2024 Bass Pro Patriota scheme that we'll see at the Coca-Cola 600. Very similar to other Bass Pro shop schemes we've seen from Austin Dillon during the Coke 600. It does look really solid, though. Looking forward to see on the racetrack in a couple weeks at the Coke 600. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sam Mayer's 2024 RTIC Cooler scheme that we're going to see this week in a couple races throughout 2024. This looks really great in my opinion. Like the colors on it. Very popular. Looks really great, to be honest with you. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Parker Redslash 2024 Harry Gant Throwback scheme that we'll see this weekend at Darlington. Really nice looking in my opinion. Jordan Anderson Racing knocked it out of the park. It looks fantastic and great. Looking forward to see on the racetrack at Darlington. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Michael McDowell's 2024 Long John Silver's throwback that we'll see this weekend. Looks okay in my opinion. Nothing too special about this throwback. Obviously an old school look for the Long John Silver scheme. It looks very interesting. Very intrigued to see how he'll do in this paint scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Blaine Perkins' 2024 Cale Yarborough throwback that we'll see at Darlington. Looks good in my opinion. I think RSS hit it out the water. It looks pretty good. Looking forward to see it out on the racetrack. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is John Nemechek's Lee Petty throwback for this weekend at Darlington. Looks alright in my opinion. I like the old school look of it. It does look pretty interesting. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Eric Jones' 2024 Richard Petty throwback. This is a throwback to his 1959 scheme for Richard Petty. Looks alright in my opinion. Do like the colors of it. Looking forward to see on the racetrack this weekend at Darlington. Glad to see Eric Jones is back as well. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Hailie Deegan's 2024 Dale Earnhardt throwback for this weekend at Darlington. A late addition to this, but looks absolutely incredible. Colors look great. Perfect. Love the yellow. They did a great job on the number placement. Everything looks amazing. One of the best throwbacks for sure of this year. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeff Burton's 2024 Capital City throwback scheme. Looks alright in my opinion. I think this could absolutely be the scheme they use going forward, which would look great out on the racetrack. It does look pretty good in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brad Keselowski's 2024 Solomon Patriota scheme that we'll see at the Coca-Cola 600. This looks really awesome in my opinion. It looks very phenomenal. Love the colors on it. Like the red. It looks absolutely amazing. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chris Buescher's 2024 Fastenal Patriota scheme, which is like a camel looking scheme. It looks pretty good in my opinion. RFK nailed it in my opinion. It looks very exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to see it on the racetrack in a couple weeks at the Coca-Cola 600. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is John Nemechek's 2024 Harry Gant throwback for next weekend's All-Star race. I'm not a big fan of this one compared to the Parker Redslash one. I'm going to be honest. Number being moved forward doesn't look great. I think the Petty font just does not make this look good. I think this really would not have been a good one for throwback. I'm glad they're doing the Lee Petty one because honestly, this does not look very good in my opinion. I do not think they did a really good job on this one, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Darlington Purse money for this weekend. So every time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series race, Bob Pockrass puts out the purse money for that event. And according to Bob, for the Cup race, it's $8,090,969. For the Xfinity race, it's $1,371,756. And for the Truck Series race, it's $770,233. That's some decent money, of course, for the Cup Series race. Xfinity's got some good money. But man, that Truck Series purse money does not look that great for this weekend. It's very interesting for sure. They need more money for the Truck Series. Xfinity's got decent money, and the Cup Series does have some decent money overall. It's interesting, and I think the money's interesting for some of these series this weekend. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chad Fincham. As it was confirmed on Wednesday that Chad Fincham will drive the 35 for Joey Gase Motorsports this weekend at Darlington. Chad Fincham has made select starts throughout the 2024 season for NBM Motorsports, and now we'll get the chance and opportunity to drive in a Chevrolet with Joey Gase this weekend. They're going to run a Kevin Harvick throwback, which looks really good in my opinion. I think they did overall a pretty solid job on this paint scheme for sure, but I'm also glad to see Chad Fincham behind the wheel wheel once again. I think Chad's a very talented driver. I know he hasn't really had a lot of starts recently. He, of course, hasn't made a lot of starts because of sponsorship funding coming into play. I think he's going to do overall an okay job. Obviously, Joey Gase's team is not the fast organization to roll. We'll see how he ends up doing, and we'll see if he can perform this weekend. They'll have to make the field, I believe. There's more entries this weekend than cars available. They're not good in the owner's points right now, so we'll see how Chad Finch can do. It's a good opportunity. Hope we can do a really good job with them this weekend at Darlington. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NBM Motorsports. As it was announced yesterday, that NBM Motorsports has revealed their number for the return to the Truck Series. The number is going to be 67. Remember, we talked about this a couple weeks ago on the channel. The NBM Motorsports is making their first start in the Truck Series since, I believe, 2011. And Jeffrey Earnhardt is going to be the driver for this seat. Now, I do not know how many races NBM is going to run in the Truck Series this year, but it's really exciting to see that they are returning this week. And I think that this is a team that's trying to build up their program. Once again, they've made select Cup starts. They've got more starts planned, including the Coco 600 later this year. I think they're also going to be running a North Wilkeshire, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, with Chad Finch. So it's good to see the NBM is making a return, and I think it's a good number to use in my opinion. 67 has not been used in the Truck Series in a very long time. I think the last time it was used was, I believe, back in 2011 from what I saw, or maybe back in 2005, I'm not entirely sure. But I am glad to see the NBM Motorsports is back in the Truck Series, and they'll be running the number 67 in a couple weeks during the Charlotte weekend. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about ThorSport Racing. As it was announced on Wednesday that ThorSport Racing has announced some crew chief changes for this weekend. So Rich Lucius, who's been the crew chief for Ben Rhodes throughout 2024, at the end of 2023, is going to be moving over to work with Jake Garcia for the rest of the year. And Doug Randolph, who's been the crew chief for Jake Garcia, will be working with Ben Rhodes throughout the rest of 2024. ThorSport Racing had to shake something up. Ben Rhodes has been struggling immensely so far in 2024, and Jake Garcia has also been struggling. So they're making this change to try to help the team going forward. Will this help them fully? I'm not entirely sure, but I think this is a change that absolutely needs to be made for them to get better. Nonetheless, it's a very interesting move, middle portion of the year. Obviously, they've moved Rich Lucius many times away from Ben Rhodes, and obviously it's really not worked out much in the past. It's a great opportunity, though, for both. We'll see how he ends up working out, and we'll see if ThorSport Racing can absolutely be better with the changes that they have made here. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Teo Pourchaire. As it was officially confirmed yesterday afternoon that Teo Pourchaire will be driving for Arrow McLaren for the rest of 2024 except the Indianapolis 500. Now, for those who are wondering who will be driving the Indy 500, it is not going to be Kyle Busch. It did not come together, even though it was rumored that Kyle Busch could have had a chance and opportunity to run the Indy 500 this year. The driver is going to be Callum Ilott, who has made select starts for Arrow McLaren this season. But Teo Pourchaire, obviously the last year's Formula 2 champion, and was supposed to run the Super Formula Series this year, but obviously with him struggling a little bit in there to start the year over at Super Formula, they're bringing him over. Teo Pourchaire's had a couple good runs so far with Arrow McLaren. I think it's a good move for him overall to drive for them for the rest of the year. Because remember, Dave Malukas was let go about a week or two ago, which I completely disagree with the decision to get rid of David Malukas. Nonetheless, I think it's a great move to bring Teo Pourchaire in. I think he is a very talented driver. I think he's going to do an excellent job with them later this year. I'm excited for him to get the chance and opportunities to run the Indy Road Course this weekend for IndyCar, which are back this weekend. So I'm glad to see him get a chance and opportunity, and I really hope he can make the best of it with Arrow McLaren, because I certainly think he's a very talented and good driver, and I'm looking forward to seeing him get the chance and opportunity to work with them later this year, including this weekend at the Indy Road Course. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. As Shane Van Gisbergen put out a tweet a couple days ago talking about a test that he did at Sonoma Raceway. They did a wheel force test with a Chevrolet team, if I'm not mistaken, because there's always a Chevy wheel force car. Why is this significant? Well, it's going to give Shane Van Gisbergen a lot more experience. And it might give him an advantage considering a lot of drivers in the Xfinity Series field don't have any experience at Sonoma Raceway. And Shane Van Gisbergen, we know, is, of course, running full-time Xfinity. SVG is very, very good at road courses. And he should have won COTA in the Xfinity Series earlier this year. But my big question is, Could this lead him having a chance and an opportunity to run for Kaulig in the Cup Series? Because I don't think that car has been announced at this point who's going to be 16 at Sonoma unless Allmendinger's driving it. But if you want my personal opinion, it should be SVG behind the wheel of that car. I think he'd do a really good job because obviously he's not running the All-Star race, unfortunately. But I would love to see Shane Van Gisbergen run full-time or run some more races with them in the Cup Series. Nonetheless, it's good to see him get a chance and an opportunity to test the car. I think he's got a chance to go out there and maybe compete for the win. We'll see how he ends up doing, and we'll see how he does in Xfinity. But I think he will have a good chance and an opportunity to run competitively with Kaulig at Sonoma. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about John Roberts. Now, if you were on Twitter yesterday, you saw that John Roberts made a teaser return to potentially go into TV. Obviously, John Roberts has not been on TV since, I believe, 2016 or 2017, but was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio for many years, and obviously has been returning to racetrack in recent years with Kenny Walls for the trackside they used to do back in the day with Kenny Walls. In fact, they're going to be at multiple races, I believe the Coast 600 in a couple weeks. I think they're also going to be in North Wilkesboro, and also I believe they're going to be at Gateway as well, doing the trackside live with Kenny Walls, which I think multiple Cup Series drivers will be part of that once again this year. John Roberts was a legend, and we're going to talk about Race Hub here in just a little bit. But I'm really intrigued what network he's going to go to if he's coming back to TV. My best guess is either Amazon or he's going to be working with TNT, which honestly, seeing him come back to TV would be phenomenal and incredible. We'll have to wait and see where he does end up going, and we'll see how he ends up doing regardless of what he does. But he certainly deserves to be on television. He always put the effort in there. He's done a phenomenal job, and certainly I would love to see him have a chance to come back to TV. My best guess is going to be with Amazon potentially, because there's more announcements coming soon, especially with schedule rumors and some schedule announcements that could be happening soon. But it's really cool to see that John Roberts will be making a return to TV, it sounds like, and I think it will likely be with Amazon, but we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about charters. Now, we've talked about the charter negotiations and the charter agreement in recent weeks, but Justin Marks was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio earlier this week, and he actually spoke on the charters. Now, we've seen a doom and gloom from the people over at 2311 Racing. Denny Hamlin said that we can miss races. Same with Curtis Polk. He said the same thing. And even Michael Jordan said that basically the sport will die if charters are not to become permanent. Justin Marks, on the other hand, actually was very positive about the situation. He expects there's going to be some positive things that are coming in the direction of the teams, and there's more money going to be coming in the way. This is very interesting because if the teams, they need to stay united because it's no secret that NASCAR is playing the conquer and divide strategy to get these charters through. And basically the teams, they want the charters to become permanent. NASCAR is supposed to send the teams an 80-page essay and an 80-page agreement potentially that is supposed to come potentially at the end of the month. We know that 2311 Racing and that team, we know they're talking about expanding as well, but they're obviously trying not to basically finalize it because they want the sport to change significantly. There's four major key pillars that we've already talked about at this particular point. Nonetheless, it's very interesting to see how things play out when it comes to the charter agreement, but I think that there is some big things coming soon. So we'll have to pay attention as time progresses and goes on when it comes to the charter agreement and the positives and stuff. I think there's a lot of positives that are going to come the way of the teams. And there's also maybe some significant negatives that are going to come out of this as well. It'll be fun to watch and see and progress as time goes on. I think a charter agreement is going to be announced in the not-so-distant future. And it's going to be very interesting to follow. So nonetheless, interesting thoughts from Justin Marks, and interesting to see that he's a little more positive about the charter situation than negative, which honestly I think is better for the sport overall if there's a lot more positives than negatives, which I think there will be some positives that do come out of this charter agreement. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carson Hocevar. Now, we're going to talk about Michael McDowell and Spire Motorsports at the end of this episode. But Doug Ducar from Spire Motorsports confirmed yesterday that Carson Hocevar will likely be returning to Spire Motorsports in 2025. Remember, Carson Hocevar has a multi-year deal with Spire Motorsports, but Bob Pockers noted yesterday when it was announced that McDowell was going to be headed to Spire Motorsports that there are some teams that are looking at Carson Hocevar. Why? Well, Carson Hocevar has been doing an extremely well job with Spire Motorsports this year. He is currently sitting 21st in the points. And when you look at the previous driver drove that 77 car, that being Ty Dillon absolutely struggled in the number 77 car, which is why there are teams that are looking at Carson Hocevar, including Trackhouse Racing. And you think about sponsors like Worldwide Express, which has a major association with Trackhouse Racing. So that's why teams are looking at him. I do expect that Carson Hocevar is going to stick with Spire more than likely. The fact that Doug Ducar really likes Carson, that's why I think he's going to stick around. But obviously things can change in a very significant way. We're going to have to follow the story as time goes on, especially of how chaotic silly season has already been. But I do truly believe that Spire Motorsports is going to have some more changes coming soon. And Andretti's potentially involved with the team as well. We'll see how that plays out. But I do expect that Carson Hocevar is going to stick around, which I think for them will be a very, very good move. So we'll see what happens. But it sounds like Carson Hocevar is not leaving the team anytime soon. And he'll be sticking around with Spire Motorsports in the 2025 season, which I think overall is good for everybody. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chevrolet. As Bob, there's a lot of talk about the Chevy side currently at the moment. As it was also announced yesterday from Chevrolet, they're no longer going to be producing sedans. And someone asked a question surrounding Chevrolet and what they're going to do in the future. According to what Bob reported yesterday, he says if Chevy could run the Camaro for a very, very long time. And they also could run a generic Chevrolet body. But it's also TBA and to be determined what's going to happen in the future for Chevrolet. Like I mentioned a second ago, the Camaro is going to be going away, I believe, at the end of 2024. And they're no longer going to be producing it. So they could run a generic Chevrolet body. Because the Chevy SS went away back in 2014 and 2015, and they ran the Chevy SS, I believe, till the end of 2017, and then switched over to the Camaro in 2018. Chevrolet would also, if they were going to make any moves to change their significant bodies, NASCAR would have to work with them on that, because NASCAR, let's be honest, with the next-gen car, they kind of took a generic Camaro body. Overall, when I look at Chevrolet's situation, when you look at the Camaro stuff, obviously, with the Camaro going away, they're going to have to make some pretty significant changes going forward with that. Still, I think it's going to be very fun to see what happens with Chevy. Some have suggested maybe Cadillac could come in the future as well. Obviously, the rumors of new manufacturers coming to play. I think Cadillac, especially with their association in some ways with NASCAR, I do think that there are going to be some things happening there. But at the same token, at the same time, I think there won't be any changes, at least for the near future. And I don't think that the Camaro is going to be going away anytime soon, at least on the NASCAR side. But the big question will be, will we see any more changes there? We'll have to wait and see. But as of right now, Chevrolet is not making any changes for at least the near future. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Matt Benedetto. As it was announced yesterday that Matt Benedetto will be driving for Viking Motorsports for the remainder of 2024. Matt Benedetto has made already 4 or 5 starts so far at Viking Motorsports throughout the 2024 season. And Matt Benedetto has had finishes, I believe, of 16th, 18th, 20th, 21st, and also, unfortunately, I think a 31st, 32nd place finish. But he's taken that 38 car from being a team that was failing to qualify races with CJ McLaughlin and has put that team in a really solid and good enough position where that team is not going to have to worry about making races anytime soon. Matt Benedetto, I've said for a very, very long time, is a very underrated driver and always gets the best out of equipment. And I think he is going to do a really good job with Viking Motorsports for the rest of the year, which also confirms to me they have a road course car, and they're going to run this weekend at Darlington as well, which I have this race circled for Matt Benedetto because Matt Benedetto is very good at Darlington historically. And the Fords have struggled a little bit when you look at the RSS cars in a sense. They have been better. Now, what are my expectations for Matt Benedetto for the rest of this season? Well, I think Matt Benedetto is going to contend for some top 10s. He actually has top 10 with the team, by the way, at Talladega. And I think he's going to have a lot of top 15s and top 20s. In fact, I think this weekend at Darlington, I think he's going to get a top 15. But now you look at next year as well. I think they're going to want to have him full-time next year as well because I think he's done a great job. And I think in the not-so-distant future, we are going to hear that Matt Benedetto is going to be announced for the remainder of 2024. He's a very good driver, in my opinion. He always gets the best out of equipment. I know he's had issues with sponsorship, among other things, but I think Matt Benedetto is a very good driver, and I think this is a really good decision to have him run the rest of 2024. We'll see if he ends up driving for them in 2025 as well, but I do expect that he is going to run full-time with them in the 2025 season. It's a great decision in my opinion. He always gets the best out of equipment, and I think he'll do a significantly great job with Viking Motorsports in 2024, and I think he'll also do very good in 2025 as well. I think he's a really talented driver and does a great job with these teams overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Race Hub. As it was reported by Kelly Crandall on Wednesday evening that NASCAR Race Hub will be coming to an end after around 15 years in 2024. It will come to an end after the NASCAR Cup Series race takes place at Sonoma. The final episode of Race Hub will take place on June 11th. This is now another major change of many significant changes that are coming in the media landscape with the new TV deal that is coming into place. But personally, I'm not a big fan of this move. Now, don't get me wrong. I have not watched NASCAR Race Hub in a few years now because I don't think it's been good in recent years. But NASCAR Race Hub was really the only major NASCAR-related TV show. It was one of the major last remnants from the Speed era. Steve Burns made that show what it was. Same with Adam Alexander, Daniel Trotta, and many other legends that were part of Fox's coverage and Speed's coverage back in the day, like Jimmy Spencer as well, made it what it was. To see Fox continue to cut corners the way they're cutting it is just unacceptable. And I question now why Fox signed a 7-year extension when they're cutting all their broadcasting rights. They're not going to have any practice qualifying outside of the Daytona 500 and the All-Star race, and even the Coke 600 as well, I believe, and the Daytona 500 and the Clash is all they're going to have. They lost their Xfinity Series coverage. They're still going to have the Truck Series coverage, which I personally think the CW should have picked that up, but that's just my opinion. But personally, I think this is a major loss for broadcasting overall to lose Race Hub. I feel bad for the people that are losing their jobs over this. I think it's really sucky to see that Race Hub is going away. Am I completely shocked? No, because Fox continues to cut corners. But I am disappointed to see this. I'm not happy about this overall, and it sucks to see that NASCAR Race Hub will no longer be a thing. Sucks. Am I completely shocked? Like I said, no. But I am disappointed for the people that have worked on this show, who put the effort, who put the work into it. It's sad, and it sucks to see that NASCAR Race Hub is sadly go away. And it's unacceptable that Fox continues to cut corners the way they've been cutting it, unfortunately, in recent weeks. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about hybrids. Now, we talked about the potential of new manufacturers coming into sport a couple days ago. We talked about the possibility of Honda coming in as early as 2026, and we also talked about Hyundai being also interested as well, according to Ed Laukus and Adam Stern. Now, Elton Sawyer was on the Dale Jr. Down talking about his racing career and also working as an official in the sport as one of the higher-up officials now. And hybrids could be on the way potentially. Now, according to what Elton Sawyer said, these new manufacturers in NASCAR are no longer building push-drive V8 engines. And they said if there is going to be new manufacturers in the sport, like Hyundai and Honda perhaps, they are going to have hybrids or sustainable fuels to get in. And that's obviously not just something that they've said, but Honda and Hyundai have told NASCAR publicly that they're not going to come into the sport unless they have some sort of hybrid components in the cars. To me, this is disappointing to hear in a sense, but also the same token at the same time, hybrids are not fully electric, and this is what's going on with the car industry. The car industry right now is completely changing, and I feel like we're kind of stumbling and kind of sending our wheels around and wagging our tails at this point, not even knowing where the car industry is going to be in the next few years. And even states like California, which are basically mandating the next 10 years to go fully electric, the grid is not sustainable to go fully electric. So that's why hybrids are becoming the big thing. Now, the big question is, if the hybrids do get in place in 2026, because we also could see different types of engine configurations. We could see Chevrolet and Ford stay with the push-drive V8s, while Honda and Hyundai, if they do come in, they could go with the new hybrid systems. It's going to be very interesting, and also we could see more increase on the horsepower side as well, which I also find very interesting and also very significant. It's going to be fun to watch as time goes on to see what happens there. But to me, I'm excited for the future in a sense. I like to see that we're talking about hybrid components. I think it's going to be very fun to watch, and we'll see what happens long term when it comes to that. Nonetheless, it'll be interesting. We've got hybrids on the way potentially as early as 2026. They also could come in 2027. But to me, I do believe there's some big changes and significant changes coming in regards to that. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Stage 60. If you were on Twitter on Wednesday morning, you saw that RFK was seizing a return for Stage 60. It looks like they are going to be making a return at some point in 2024. Remember, Stage 60 made its debut earlier this year at the Daytona 500 with David Reagan. And to be fair, that Stage 60 car was extremely fast and very, very quick. Now, who could be potential candidates to get behind and what race could they be returning at? Well, they could also be returning at the Coca-Cola 600, and I think if they return the Coke 600, I look at drivers like Ty Majeski perhaps, maybe even Haley Deegan, maybe Cole Custer, maybe Riley Herbst. What about Matt Benedetto? I could see that happening. But another race I could see them returning at is the Chicago Street Course, and I look at Cam Waters. Cam Waters is basically made select starts in the Truck Series with ThorSport Racing and is also currently racing in the Supercars Series. I don't know if there's a supercar race going on during the Chicago Street Course. If any of my Australian fans that are watching have to get to this point of the video, let me know if he's running that. But I think Cam Waters could also be a candidate as well. Even Frankie Muniz could be someone to watch for as well. But I love to see that it looks like Stage 60 is coming back because the more cars that we have and the more races we have with bigger car counts, the better it is for the sport. Yes, it's an open entry and they don't make as much money, but I love seeing that Stage 60 more than likely is going to return. My prediction right now is that this either is going to be run at Chicago or the Charlotte race. Also, RFK could expand to third full-time car. There's a lot of talk about that as a potential possibility, but we'll see what happens there. Nonetheless, I love the fact that it looks like that we're going to see Stage 60 making a comeback and making a return, and I think it'll be either Ty Majeski, maybe Haley Deegan, or maybe even Carl Levers comes out of retirement and drives Stage 60 car, which I think would be phenomenal and really incredible to see him come back. But I don't know if Carl Levers is making a return. I don't think he's interested at this point, but he could come back. Who knows at this point, because Carl Levers has been around the sport in recent years. Nonetheless, I'm glad to see a Stage 60 is making a comeback. It looks like it'll make a return in the not-so-distant future with certain drivers. My prediction right now is that it'll be Cam Waters or Ty Majeski at this point because their names have been linked to that ride. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about 2311 Racing, as they're also teasing a return for the number 50 car. There was a teaser video that came out yesterday with Denny Hamlin sitting down and talking to maybe his PR rep, Jared Allen, and they showed a golden ticket. And they're teasing the next driver for the number 50 car. Now, when I saw this video, I started kind of guessing who could be a candidate for this ride because they mentioned is someone who really loved the number 11 car. I saw a lot of people suggesting Carl Levers potentially. I saw Kurt Busch mentioned, but Kurt Busch obviously still has not been medically cleared, to my understanding. I saw Sheldon Creed mentioned quite a bit. I saw even Chandler Smith mentioned, because Chandler Smith's a big fan of Denny Hamlin. I even saw other drivers like Eric Almirola mentioned as well. But the name that I keep thinking about is Corey Heim. Corey Heim and Heim Time. Corey Heim's already made a couple starts in the Cup Series for Legacy Motor Club. But also remember, he's not only a reserve driver for Legacy Motor Club, but he's also a reserve driver for 2311 Racing. And you know what number Corey Heim's been using in the Truck Series? Number 11. He's had that number 11 truck the last 2 years with Tricon Garage. And Corey Heim grew up being a pretty massive and huge Denny Hamlin fan. I think Corey Heim is going to be driving. Now, the big question I have is what race could we see the 50 car return? Maybe Gateway, perhaps. I know that the Truck Series will be at Gateway later this year, so maybe he runs a Gateway in the number 50 car. It'd be cool to see them return at St. Louis. Could they return another track like Kansas later down the road? Corey Heim was pretty fast at Gateway, especially at the end of the event. What about another track down the road? Like maybe somehow they go to a track like Pocono, perhaps, when the Truck Series is around. I think it's going to be a weekend where the Truck Series is going to be at, to be honest. But I think there's also, you got to think about this as well. This could lead to Corey Heim going full-time with 2311 Racing as well. But I think it's cool to see that 2311 Racing is bringing the 50 car back. It'll probably be announced in the not-so-distant future. It'll be in that 50 car. My prediction right now, and it might be announced today as well, but my prediction is, and I think it's going to be Corey Heim. Corey Heim has been associated with 2311 Racing. He's a reserve driver for the team, and I think it'd be really fun and awesome to see him get the chance and opportunity to work with this organization next season. We'll see what ends up happening in regards to that, but I'm excited to see the future, and I think that Corey Heim, like I said, will likely be the driver of the number 50 car for 23XI Racing. And I think there's also a great chance and possibility that Corey Heim will be in the 50 or 67 car in 2025 with 23XI Racing. I think he'll likely be the driver for that seat, which will also be teammates above Walls Tyler Reddick if that ends up happening. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of 3 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about the 2025 NASCAR schedule. Now, Jordan Bianchi, who's always on top of it when it comes to NASCAR schedules, wrote out an article in regards to the 2025 NASCAR schedule yesterday. And he wrote out some things that he's hearing in regards to that. According to Jordan Bianchi, the 2025 NASCAR schedule is likely going to be announced sometime this month. The last couple of years, since around 2020, 2021, the schedule has usually been released later in the year. It was released, I believe, in 2022 in August. I think in last year, it was released in October. I think 2022 was released in September, and the 2023 schedule now 24 schedule was announced in October of this year, which were a lot of big significant changes, but also some not big changes. This is going to be the earliest the schedule has been, I believe, released since 2019 for the 2020 schedule, which they made some big significant changes for the 20 schedule as well. It's going to be cool to see schedule released a little earlier. But here's some of the big changes that he noted in the article as well. It sounds like Mexico City was a track we'll be going to. And it sounds like we'll be headed to the Autodromo Hernando Rodriguez track in 2025, which will likely replace a spring Richmond day. Obviously, Richmond has been rumored for the last few months that they're going to be losing a date, especially with not a great attendance for the Easter weekend, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But Richmond also didn't have great attendance, and the racing product on the short tracks has not been great. And it's no secret that NASCAR has been wanting to go international for a very, very long time. And Mexico City's been mentioned quite a bit. As much as I do like Richmond, I don't think the track deserves 2 dates. In fact, I think a lot of tracks don't deserve 2 dates. And we're going to be headed to a track that's been ran in NASCAR before. The Autodromo Hernando Rodriguez track raced from 2005 to 2008. Denny Hamlin won his first top-tier series race at that track. Also, we saw Kyle Busch winner in 2008. 2005 was won by, I believe, Martin Truex Jr., and 2007 was won by Juan Pablo Montoya, which is his first big win in the top 3 series. I think it's going to be really cool to head out to Mexico. They also could change the layout as well. I think Mexico City will produce a pretty solid and good product as well, even though the road course package has been a little mediocre. Let's talk about the Clash. There's big changes coming there as well. They are considering going back to Daytona in 2025, but according to Jordan Bianchi, it sounds like the Clash might be moving over to Bowman Gray Stadium. Remember, it was announced a few weeks ago that Bowman Gray Stadium has been acquired by NASCAR. And what Mike Joy mentioned on the broadcast is we're likely going to be headed to Winston-Salem. I question Bowman Gray hosting the Clash, and here's why I question it. The temperature. I think it'd be cool to run at Bowman Gray for the All-Star race. I think it'd make a lot more sense there, and maybe bring the Clash back to a different track in a warmer climate. I think it would make a lot more sense to go to Mexico City there. But I understand why they're doing this if they do bring it to Bowman Gray Stadium. And I think it's going to be fun to have it at Bowman Gray. I don't think it's going to tarnish the sport like I've seen some people suggest on social media. But at the same token, same time, the temperature is going to be a major factor and a potential major problem as well. Let's talk about Southern California. We already know that the LA Coliseum is not coming back. We have heard behind the scenes they're not going to be going to the Dodger Stadium, and they were looking to go to Long Beach this year. But remember, it was announced that IndyCar will still be staying at Long Beach for the long-term future. So it sounds like NASCAR will not be going to Southern California in 2025, because also the Auto Club short track isn't going to be ready at least till 2026. Let's move on to Canada. They're trying to get it to Montreal, and they were 50-50 right now if we're going to go to Montreal this year. But it sounds like if it doesn't happen this year, we're probably going to go to Montreal in 2026. We almost went to Montreal in 2024, but they moved the F1 race, the Canadian Grand Prix, a little bit earlier in the year, which is why we're not going to Canada this year and probably not going in 2025. We've had to probably replace the August date, which I think we will go to Canada probably in 2026. Let's talk about the championship race, because this is the last big significant change outside of Easter. It's probably going to say Phoenix, unfortunately, which I'm not a big fan of personally, because I think Phoenix has ran its course as a championship event, And the racing product, in my opinion, is very lackluster to very mediocre. So I think they should go to a different track. We had heard that Homestead was potentially looking to host a day in 2025, but according to Jordan Bianchi, they're looking to do renovations and upgrades for 2026. They're pushing to have the race in 2026 and make renovations. So it sounds like while they won't be going to the Homestead for the championship in 2025, it sounds like 2026 is going to be the day they are going to run there, which I think is a good decision. Homestead's a great track, produces great racing, but they need to upgrade the facility. So all these are the big changes there. In Easter, we're not going to be racing on Easter, it sounds like, in 2025, which I'm indifferent about. As much as I want racing, I'm okay with having Easter off, and I think it's going to make the teams a lot happier as well, so they can spend more time with families, even though the race is at nighttime. So I think this, in my opinion, is interesting. Sounds like the All-Star race is going to be in North Wilkesboro once again as well, and it sounds like there could be some announcements from TV partners in the not-so-distant future on that part. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the rest of the schedule when it gets announced, but it sounds like a schedule could be getting announced near the end of the month. Maybe around the Coast 600 weekend is when we're finally going to get the schedule for 2025. We'll see what happens, and we'll see what other changes are going to be announced for the schedule. We already know Daytona 500 Sports at. It sounds like there's some other big changes coming down the road in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Michael McDowell. Now, I did a video talking about this on the channel a couple days ago, but it was officially announced on Wednesday, shockingly, that Michael McDowell will not be returning to ThorSport Motorsports in 2025, and instead, he'll be going to Spire Motorsports in 2025, driving the number 71 car. Now, unlike most of Michael McDowell's previous contracts, this is a multi-year deal. So he will not just only be in that 71 car in 2025, he'll likely be in a 71 car in 2026. It's not confirmed who the crew chief is going to be. It's rumored that maybe we could see movement, maybe Travis Mack going over to that car, or his current crew chief, that being Travis Peterson, could potentially go over to this team as well, but Travis Peterson also could stick around with ThorSport Motorsports in 2025. This is absolutely a massive bombshell because Michael McDowell has been with ThorSport Motorsports since 2018. And this is going to have major major moves happening for the rest of silly season going forward. This is also going to be the first time that Michael McDowell has driven a Chevrolet since 2017 when he drove for Levine Family Racing. Now, why is Michael McDowell leaving Front Row and going to Spire Motorsports? Because a lot of people think that this is actually a downgrade because that 71 car has struggled this year. Well, the big thing, stability. Michael McDowell, since getting to ThorSport Motorsports, has only had one-year deals since 2018 when he joined the team. With Spire Motorsports, one, he's going to be getting a lot more money, which is going to be big for his family. But number two, he's going to have stability. Multi-year deal is really huge for Michael McDowell, and he isn't going to have to be going around his shoulder worrying about whether or not his job is at jeopardy. And we know it's no secret that Michael McDowell was looking to go to different teams this year. He was looking to go to SHR for 2024. Obviously, that did not end up happening, and he stuck around with Front Row. Also, you look at Ford right now, they're not as fast currently at the moment. So I think that is a big reason why Michael McDowell is leaving. Now, another thing noted, and Bob Pox reported actually this morning, it sounds like he's actually going to be driving with Spire Motorsports in the Truck Series part-time, which I think is going to be big for drivers like Roger Griff and Nick Sanchez if they stick around with Spire Motorsports next year. And also going to be working with Kyle Busch in a pretty big way as well. As for expectations for Michael McDowell, I think he is going to do better than Zane Smith's done in that car. I think they're going to be getting direct support from Chevrolet, and I think there's some other big things that are coming down the pipeline. And he's going to be working likely with two really good drivers, but it's also going to be that veteran experience. They've got a lot of young drivers over at Spire, and they need veteran experience over there outside of Kyle Busch. And I think that Michael McDowell is going to provide that veteran experience that they are absolutely and desperately looking for currently at the moment. So what happens for the rest of silly season? Well, obviously, we'll talk about SHR and Front Row in just a little bit because I think there's a potential major changes coming over there. But what happens to Zane Smith? Zane Smith is likely going to be full-time with Trackhouse next year in a third Trackhouse car. And I saw something yesterday that it sounds like the Trackhouse might have already acquired a third charter for them next year and taken the 16 charter from Call Racing and moved it over into Trackhouse Racing. Zane Smith's under contract and on loan right now is over to Spire Motorsports, which is why I think that he's going to be full-time with Trackhouse next year. He's on loan with them. He's got a multi-year deal. But what does it mean for Shane Van Gisbergen? Well, Shane Van Gisbergen is probably going to be with either Kaulig Racing next year in the Cup Series or be in a fourth Trackhouse car. We know Trackhouse is trying to get not just one, but two charters are being extremely aggressive during this silly season and making moves. So I think they're not only going to get one charter this season, but I think they're going to get two charters this year and expand the two cars there. I think Kaulig is going to downsize. I know that Chris Rice has said they don't have charters for sale, but I think they're going to downsize their program and be a one-car team. They may even get capsized and moved in all the way into the organization where Kaulig's Cup program is basically brought in for Trackhouse, and Zane and SVG go there. And then you start thinking about all the other stuff as well for Michael McDowell. I think McDowell's got a 2 to 3 year deal with the organization. I just think this is a great move for Michael McDowell career-wise. I understand a lot of people are questioning the move, and it's understandable why people would be questioning the move, but I'm not questioning this move for Michael McDowell. To me, it makes a lot of sense for his career, and I think he's going to do a significantly really good job with them this year. He's a great talent, in my opinion, always gets the best out of equipment. He built Finch Motorsports up and built up a really solid foundation and a really strong program. So I'm excited for McDowell's future. It's a shame he won't be at front row, but I think this also is going to open up silly season in a massive and a really, really big way, because I think there's some other significant changes that we're going to discuss here in just a second. Nonetheless, I'm excited for him. I think he's going to do better than Zane Smith, and I think he's going to get some top 10s, some top 15s, and I think he's going to do a really good job with Spire Motorsports in 2025. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Stewart-Haas Racing. There's a lot of rumors circulating around Stewart-Haas Racing, and they're the big team that's been talked about over the course of the last few weeks. Early in the offseason, many speculated that Stewart-Haas Racing, because they're no longer going to be a key Ford team in 2025, many speculated that they were going to lose a charter at the end of this year. Then a couple weeks later passed by. It became clear they may not just be selling one charter, but they might be selling two charters. And earlier this week, it became reported by multiple YouTubers and multiple reporters that it sounds like that they could be merging with Finch Motorsports in 2025. Now, Jerry Free spoke to me yesterday, and he actually stated that probably there's not a lot of smoke to this, which obviously Tony Stewart's name is Smoke. His nickname is Smoke. So many kind of went and thought that there might be a merger happening. But now, even according to Matt Weaver, it sounds like that Stewart-Haas Racing could be selling their whole entire Cup and Xfinity operation, which could make major moves. Their entire building and operation could be on the market for this year. So not only do you have potentially two charters that are being sold from Stewart-Haas Racing, but their whole entire Cup operation could be up for grabs. And according to multiple reports, they already have a charter that has already been sold. And it sounds like Finch Motorsports is a team that's going to be diving in to get this together. Finch currently has two cars at the moment, that being, of course, Todd Gill and Michael McDowell, but I just mentioned a second ago, they already have announced Michael McDowell not going to be there next year. They've got Todd Gillen who's under contract, to my understanding, for 2025, so he's going to stick around next year. Now, what does this mean for a potential merger or Front Row buying up the whole operation? I think Front Row is going to buy up the whole entire operation. Well, I think this could be the organization we see. I think Todd Gillen, no doubt, is going to stick around. I think Josh Berry is going to stick around as well. Josh Berry and Rodney Childers really work well together, and we've seen Josh Berry have some pretty good runs, and that 4-car has had some speed at times and has just had a lack of execution at points, but they've been one of the more decent Fords at times this season. Then you have Noah Gragson. I think Noah Gragson is also going to stick around this year. Noah Gragson's been doing a really great job with SHR, and he has been bringing in a lot of outside sponsors this year. So I think Noah Gragson's going to stick around. I think he's at points also been the fastest Stewart-Haas racing car. And then you also have Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe's got funding from Mahindra. It would make no sense to me for him to go at this point. I know there was talk maybe he could go to the Wood Brothers, but I think that Chase Briscoe is also going to stick around. But what if those aren't all the drivers that could be in play? Well, you also have Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece is heavily rumored, though, to be leaving his team at the end of the year, which we'll get back in just a second. You've also got Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst is under contract with Stewart-Haas Racing for this season. I think Riley Herbst could also be in the running for one of these seats. He's got funding from Monster Energy. There's a couple other big companies that are working with him as well this year. You've also got Cole Custer. Cole Custer's name is someone I've heard that has been mentioned as a potential candidate and possibility to go to this team this year if this merger ends up happening, because everyone thinks that Stewart-Haas and Tony are selling the whole entire operation at this point. So Cole Custer could be in the running for one of these seats as well. But he also could be out of the series altogether and could be going to another team like the Wood brothers, perhaps. That could be a potential possibility. And then you also think about the other possibilities. You've got Haley Deegan, who's in the 4 camp as well. But when SHR lost the funding from Eric Almirola and Kevin Harvick this year, that's when the rumbling started, and many people thought that Tony's not interested anymore, and Kevin Harvick being gone, and Stewart-Haas, there's obviously some other stuff going on behind the scenes that I'm not going to get into in this episode. But if SHR sells their whole entire operation, this could have a lot of major plays. Because where do the other charters go? We know 2311 Racing, they're interested in expanding. I know that there have been people saying they're not going to expand, but I think 2311 Racing is absolutely going to expand this season. There's no way they're not going to, right? They're talking about it. They've been talking about it for a few years. They're looking to expand. RFK is looking to expand. They've ran a 60 car. There's no reason why you wouldn't run the 60 car at this point. Trackhouse, they're looking to expand. We know Junior Motorsports is interested in going in the Cup next year. You've got other drivers that are in play and other teams that are in play for silly season at this point, but I think there's a lot of big moves that are going to happen the rest of the year. If Stewart-Haas Racing, in fact, does sell their operation, it's going to be a shame, right? Because SHR has had a lot of success. They've won a lot of races. They've been in contention for championships. They've won championships with Tony Stewart and Kevin Harvick. But at the same time, they passed up on opportunities for drivers like Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch, who, in my opinion, would have made their organization a lot better and probably would have brought some significant funding and sponsorship as well. To me, it's going to be sad and disappointing if Stewart-Haas Racing does shut their program down, because it's not just their Cup operation that could be in jeopardy if this happens, but also their Xfinity program could also be in jeopardy as well. To me, it's going to be disappointing if this does end up happening, but at same token, same time, we keep hearing so many different changes at SHR, and it keeps changing on a week-by-week basis. We could have 1 week where we hear SHR could be shutting down. We also hear rumors that they may be merging. We also hear they only might sell 1 or 2 charters. And we know there's the building probably up for sale because Front Row is looking to expand. To me, there's so many things that are going to happen the rest of the silly season. I think there's a lot of big things that are going to happen relatively soon. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go more of that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What do you think is going to happen to SHR? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other stories, including Michael McDowell going to Spire? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. Later tonight on the channel, if the Truck Series race does happen, I will have a Truck Series race review. Tomorrow on the channel, if the Truck Series race doesn't happen, we'll have a truck review, we'll have Xfinity review, we'll have Cup reactions to qualifying, also have an SVG video dropping. Sunday, we'll have the starting lineup video, and we'll also have the Cup Series race review, and the Monday, we should have a NASCAR news video dropping. Got a ton of great content dropping that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.